the Silver Screen Project.
Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In preparation for Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.3, we went back and watched Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.2 from 2017. 6 whole years ago. What did you think of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a very good sequel. It expands on the great cast and kind of world of the first one. I think James Gunn really knows how to do an ensemble cast.
He does, yeah.
I think I felt very positive about this, to be honest. Yeah, how about you?
I remember when I first saw it in cinemas, I was like, this is as good as the first one. It's not as good as the first one.
You reckon? Yeah.
It's still very enjoyable. It's got more flaws. Last time I struggled to find any negatives. I've definitely got a few in this. But like you said, it's still good fun. It's in like the higher tier of MCU films.
For sure, yeah. I would agree.
It's funny and it kind of, there's a lot of deeper stuff you go into with this than in the first one.
I think so. I think that's what I quite like. The kind of emotional aspects are a little bit more kind of, like you say, deeper, a little bit.
Yeah.
They dig into the characters' backstories a little bit more.
So going straight into it, it's a film built on like relationships. So the obvious one is Peter and Ego, their relationship. Yeah. But then you've also got Nebula and Gamora's relationship.
Yeah, and we spoke about that last time. It was kind of teased, but this time I feel like they kind of fast track it, but I think it goes to quite a good conclusion quickly.
You've also got Peter and Yondu as well.
Yeah.
You've got, I loved, from a more comedy side, Mantis and Drax's relationship, because they're a duo in this.
Really
then also Rocket and Yondu's relationship, where Rocket kind of realizes how similar they are.
Yeah.
And it's like it's these one-on-one relationships that are throughout the film that really make it stand out as like each one of them has meaning.
Yep.
And the Mantis Drax one's a bit more jokey, but there is still some meaning between their conversations.
Yeah, and all of them really, they're very well planned out. They're very they're almost in pairs, some of those as well.
Yeah.
Like the pairs are in pairs. So like you say, the Yondu and Peter and the Yondu and Ego are kind of opposites of each other almost. They it fits together nicely. I think so much of the kind of the heavier side of this film is really nicely plotted out. But just lots of there were so many moments that I just kept thinking like, and it's not that this isn't in the first one necessarily, but things are really well telegraphed. So the spacesuits that are kind of the glowing things is introduced when Drax is doing his really funny moment where he's swinging around outside, and that's obviously a pivotal thing at the end. Same as the rocket things, and the ambulary batteries or harbulary batteries or whatever they ended up being called. That's another thing that comes in. There's a couple other little threads. That it feels carefully thought out, and it feels like someone spent some time on it, and I feel like it's so stupid to be highlighting that as something. Films take fucking ages to make, but clearly a lot of them don't have as much thought put into them.
And I think one star of this film is Yondu.
Yeah,
in the first one he's around,
he's a bit
he's
more
got cool
note,
bits,
isn't he, really? Yeah.
Whereas in this, you find out that he's basically not liked by the Ravagers.
I love that
in
Ravager
that great
stuff,
weird Ravager city.
It's so weird because it's introduced that, and there's like yellow like robot sex workers, and Yondu is literally doing his trousers up when you first see him, and you're like, holy shit.
But you get introduced to him there, and you find out that basically he was kicked out of the tribe because he was selling kids essentially.
Because in the first one we don't know that there are more of them as well, but we think of him as this bad guy.
And then as it develops, it's like he was doing that, but it turns out that that's why he kept on to Peter was because he realized what Ego was doing,
and that's another thing that's kind of, it's almost the rule of three where it's hammered in, he was going to eat me, and that's like a joke, or him crawling through spaces, and then it's kind of third or fourth time is when we get the truth kind of revealed. I feel like that kind of, we spoke in the first about the first Guardians last week, or whenever this comes out, the first episode. We spoke about the really careful balance of heavier moments and humor in a way that, especially with these MCU films, in the last phase or so of films being released, maybe that's not been quite so delicately kind of balanced. And there's moments in this, I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a moment, it's either to do with the skeletons in the planet or some heavy kind of reveal. and it's then kind of juxtaposed with the bit where they're going through the 700
Yeah.
portals. And I think that even though that's such a silly juxtaposition, I feel like it works really well to give a bit of levity.
See, for me, it was kind of hit and miss, and that I thought was really good because it's still in my. And then there's other bits, we kind of praised it on how it let like the deep moments be deep moments. There's a couple of moments in this, not to go into negative suicide, because the deep moments are good. It's just once, I think there was one Mantis and Drax conversation, I can't remember the context, but they're having quite a deep, meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
And then it kind of ends with Drax making a joke, and I was kind of like, I kind of wish they'd left that out. Even though it's quite a good joke, but leave it out. Speaking of which, Mantis as a character introduced, she's fun. She's fun. I like Mantis.
I remember first one or two, I don't know how many times I've seen this, not many at all, but I remember kind of coming away going, yeah, I liked her. She feels very different to the rest of them. She's much more kind of naive. She's got this kind of, the rest of them are kind of gruff. They're kind of space pirate vibes or bounty hunters. Or
she's more innocent.
She's more innocent. I really like that, and I think it works well, especially when you compare it with Drax's naivety in a completely different way, because he's got this literal meaning thing, and that works really well. But I think originally I thought maybe she didn't have masses to do, but I think looking back at this now and having seen the holiday special where she gets fleshed out a little bit more, I feel like this works really well. And I feel like this, considering there's so many things going on in this film.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, to get into negatives at some point, the villains is when you're looking at that, is something we can talk about a bit later about how much is kind of going on there. And maybe some of that was slightly unnecessary. But I think just like in terms of just overall good stuff, like the visual style is brought over from the first one.
Yeah, and it looks fantastic.
It looks fantastic. There's so many cool things with different planets, with technology, like Rocket's always doing little gadgety things.
Yeah,
and
one scene that I absolutely loved is when they're on Ego's planet and he's in the forest with the Ravagers turning up. And he's got all his little things and he's running around jumping on them, like sticking stuff.
Good.
It's such a cool scene.
At the end, they're like, you haven't got your gadgets, what are you going to do? And he just beats the shit out of two guys. And it's like, he's trained, he's cybernetically enhanced, so we keep hearing about.
Like it was just him and Groot before they met the rest of them. They were out doing stuff.
Doing fine, but yeah, like the look, like one of the things I really like the thing with all the lasers that they use at the end, like the different things moving around. And then we've got Ego's planet that's like this kind of weird, like as you look at it more and you kind of realize more, you see like the organic elements of everything a bit more. And it's kind of this whole thing of like how much of this is, because it is literally him, but is it all literally him? Do you know what I mean? And I feel like some of the patterns you see in the background looks really like kind of like leafy, kind of veiny situation.
I think it's quite cool because like it looks like you say, like quite organic. There's a bit where like Gamora goes out and then Nebula attacks her, where like there's also elements of like there's just a sense of it feeling fake.
In
some ways,
how empty it is.
It's empty. There's like the desert with just he's not bothered to put him in there. And then the stuff that is there is like so particular. It's like this doesn't seem real. It doesn't feel lived in.
Yeah, and I think that's something when I first watched it, when they first get there and there's all these bubbles, I was like, this is kind of weird, but I think that's kind of what you're supposed to feel. It just kind of
puts you on the edge of like, I don't trust this place, which is good foreshadowing.
One of the things, without going fully into negatives again, because we'll spend a little bit of time on it in a moment, but the part that's so on the nose when they're throwing the energy ball around and it's literally father and son playing catch with each other. I remember when that happened first time I watched it, I was like, fucking hell.
Do you remember when we covered the Adam Project for the main podcast, and we were talking about how like apparently it's such a central thing in America to throw catch like father and son, and like apparently it's back in this.
It's just and that cringed me out the first time. In this, watching it again, I feel like maybe it's intentionally on the nose there. I don't, because like I said, James Gunn is he seems to know what he's doing most of the time, and I feel like he's pretty aware of that. But I mean, I've written down bits and pieces about all the characters, but like overall, I think everyone, like I said at the start, really gets their time to shine. There's some great lines throughout this.
Even so, it starts off with them defending the batteries with that weird tentacle monster. Even that bit is a great reintroduction to all the characters. It shows all of the main ones, their personality, who they are now, particularly Baby Groot, 'cause obviously it's the first time properly seeing him, and like just being like, oh yeah, and it's even like Peter says to Gamora like, oh, you've got a gun, but I'm the gun guy. You're meant to have swords, and it's like, oh yeah, because she likes swords, and then she does use her sword to like save the day. Drax is running around being like a lunatic, and it's like, yeah, these are. I know these characters again. You could not have seen it for like 10 years. Just watch that and be like, oh yeah, I know who these all are. It's a great way to getting you back on board. There's some other fun bits. I mean, speaking of Baby Groot, actually, like we said last week, how great Groot was.
Yeah.
And it's a different character. He's not as good. Still quite entertaining though.
Oh, definitely. There's a couple of great moments.
The bit where Rocket and Yondu are in the jail and he has to go get the fin. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It's very funny. And that's then echoed again. That might be what I was thinking. Echoed with the bomb at the end where it's like, here's the instructions, and it's like, no, don't press that button. It's just
and then he does it. And then it's quite happy to be silly when it wants to as well. Like the whole taser face stuff.
Yes.
Is just very funny and it's very silly.
That's what I was thinking. They forecast the fact that going out in space, it kills you by showing like 3 members of the crew going out. It's like all the puzzle pieces for Yondu's sacrifice are all just nicely laid out throughout. And it is very basic screenwriting Chekhov's gun situation, but you know
it works.
It works really
well. On first watch, you don't think, this is good. This is because this stuff's going to happen. One other thing I liked was the moment. I think it's shot and acted really well. The moment when Peter Quill finds out that Ego put the tumor in his mum's head, because he's like the eyes and stuff, but he's like fully believing in all this,
he's
and then the moment that does, he just turns, and it's not even like an explanation.
I love how he just shoots
immediately, just shoots it like 10 times,
the fuck out of it,
and it's like 'cause he's not even debating it for a second. Like, if he has to choose between his mum and his father, like he's choosing his mum without the second doubt. So he just and there's no like, what, why, what, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's just bang, 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 bang. It's great. It's such a well done scene because it's you kind of the viewer can see the doubts in what Ego's talking about when you start being like, this guy's fucked up, but. Peter,
and we're not sure if he's still completely under the spell, but it's that one.
Peter seems still completely convinced, and he even seems happy to move on from his friends because the way they're talking about it, and you're like, fuck. And then instantly it's
obviously enough that, which, like, to criticize it is like, fucking Ego should have known not to fucking, like, he literally, I guess he had him under his spell, like, in more ways than one, but he starts doing his evil monologue, and it's like, this is pretty sinister to be dumping on someone now.
You could say he's got a pretty big ego to think he can get away with it.
But in that kind of section of the film, there's so many good lines from Peter. Like, I just love when they're talking about all the stuff you can make, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna make some weird shit," and that's full like Parks and Rec. Like,
it feels very Peter Quill as well.
Really does. And then also when they're escaping and Ego's kind of reforming in front of him. And he's like venting about stuff, and Rocket's like, "You guys are all really messed up," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm messed up. That's my freaking father." And he's like this like glowing skeleton man in front of him. Like, it's just, it's like, of course I have issues. Yeah,
it's good fun.
Yeah.
To go into the more,
well, just before that, Yondu, the funeral, that whole last sequence, I think is fantastic.
And we
very
see
touching.
Michelle Yeoh obviously returns in Shang-Chi as a different character.
Yes, there's quite a few voices and names in that scene.
Is it?
Sylvester Stallone is Starhawk, whatever he's called. It is
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus is the robot head.
Yeah.
I don't think the Space Sorcerer has a voice, but they're the original cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, aren't they? The original team. The Ice Head guy is Lex Luthor from Smallville, who is also in Zeta Project as.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That guy. Anyway,
that guy.
That guy. I think he's got a podcast. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah. Yes, into the negatives.
Yeah, so I've only got a few bits. It was a fun film.
Yeah.
One thing is, it wasn't as funny as the first one. Like the first one, even on the rewatch,
I think I laughed more in this one.
Really?
I think Drax was way funnier in this one. I think they nail that kind of humor, and it's a lot of the lines with Mantis as well.
Yeah,
how he thinks she's so ugly is just I just really like that.
I do. Don't get me wrong. I do think it's funny. I think there's just kind of a middle bit before the reveal of Ego being bad. There's just like 20 minutes, half an hour where it just kind of lulls a bit, and you just kind of like, okay.
I watched it in 2 halves, so that might be part of the.
Yeah, I was quite tired when I watched it, so it might have affected me more. But I was just kind of like, I feel like the first one never had like 20 minutes where you were starting to.
I think it's definitely a little bit more bloated, and that's what I was going to say about the villains that I mentioned earlier. I think the Sovereign are an interesting idea for villains, and I think
I think the Sovereign are quite fun.
Where it goes with where it's going to go with them with I can't remember what his name is, the Golden Adam guy, Adam
Warlock.
Adam Warlock is the kind of hint at the end there with Adam, and I'm fairly sure from bits and pieces that I think that's what we're going to see in the 3rd volume. And I like them. I like that they're all these uptight British people that are gold, and and they've got like the weird arcade drones that have like the arcade. I like that, but I also feel like the Ravagers could have filled some of that role in the story, and it's the only thing that makes it feel a little overstuffed.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do like that it means that there's lots of people after them, and they're the enemies that just turn up and cause trouble. But I think it doesn't fully work for me. I think that it's almost there.
Yeah, no, I think that's
it's because they don't really get like a proper conclusion, and it's
just a big group of people, and we've already got a big group of people with the Ravagers.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I guess the Ravagers all get killed, don't they? Which is great. That scene with the arrow is great. It's going around.
Oh yeah, another
very
great.
Good.
And it's longer than the one in the
much longer.
And it's great. One other thing that I found annoying that they do in films a lot. They do it in plenty of Marvel films.
Yeah.
That I always just feel a bit let down by is the whole thing of like, oh, in this film, Peter finds out that he's like actually a god, and then by the end of the film, he's lost his powers. And it's like,
I think I missed what was there a line about that?
What about him?
Did they mention him losing his powers?
It's because his powers is based on Ego's planet as well. So when they blow up the center bit, he loses powers too.
But the thing is that he already had some powers in his DNA because he held the stone the first time. So I think he's still a bit superhuman?
I think not anymore. I think he could do that because he was still like genetically connected to Ego, but now Ego's been blown up.
Because the thing is, everybody else in the Guardians is a little bit superpowered.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe it's a residual little bit. I mean, everyone in the MCU, like Black Widow's, well, I was going to say she's always fallen off stuff, but
it's wow, too many times if you ask me. But I always just find it a little cheap when they get a film. They're like, we're going to make him really, really strong, but then by the end of the film, he's not that strong. He's back to normal.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I didn't love that part of it. I think it's interesting not interesting, but I like how they only use it a little bit, and it's not like if he was using it the whole film and then he got depowered. That's the kind of cheap kind of. I think it verges on being okay for me.
Yeah, the one last thing I've got is, and it's not even this film's fault at all, is that the first one felt so fresh and original that a sequel to it, and then one of the great things about the first one is the fact that it's so original and so fresh. A sequel to it is never going to have that same originality because it's a sequel, and you just kind of like, oh yeah, I like these guys.
Yeah.
But you're just kind of seeing a lot more the same. And I'm like, I really like the first one. Maybe
I think for me, I think partly because I haven't seen this very much, and I think because we get a couple of new additions to the group. I mean, by the end of it, we've got Mantis is with them, Nebula's gone off, but I think ends up back with them before the next one. We've got Kraglin's with them. We haven't mentioned him. I think he's great.
He's good
fun. Really nice. At the post credits where he accidentally puts the arrow into Drax. Hilarious.
It's great.
Because there's extra characters being added, it kind of felt quite similar to the first one in that freshness to me. I don't know. That's just maybe because I've only seen it like once before.
Yeah.
But I genuinely came away from this like I really hope the third one is as good as these first two.
Yeah.
So in my head, like I've got them kind of on a similar kind of
interesting.
level.
I definitely hold the first one high.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think this isn't like a great film, because it is. So we've got a couple of bits of trivia for you.
Yes, please.
Firstly, when director James Gunn was writing the script for the movie and proposed the idea of Ego being Star-Lord's father, Marvel told him they didn't have the rights to the character.
Oh, right, okay.
The rights belong to 20th Century Fox, because he's linked to Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer. And James Gunn had nobody else in mind for Peter's father, so he had to ask Fox if he could use the character. Fox said yes. In return, Marvel gave Fox more creative freedom with Negasonic Teenage Warhead superpowers in Deadpool. I was like, I never knew that link. So the reason that they can kind of do whatever they want with her in Deadpool is because they let Marvel use Ego.
Interesting.
That's a weird link. Obviously, Deadpool came out like a year before Guardians 2.
I feel like I've seen, to go off very slightly, I feel like all those characters are being kept on for Deadpool 3. So that's interesting. So they might carry that version on.
It
Depends what
makes
they do with
sense.
mutants and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. That was a little trade they did.
His dad in the comics, I think it's like Jason, but like J, comma, what's it, like an apostrophe son, and he's from like Spartax or something like that.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Because
But he's not Ego.
He's not Ego, but he's more of a humanoid guy, which makes sense rather than
the other. So there's 5 mid and post credits for this, which is
I was thinking
they just kept a lot of them are just kind of little bits. The main one's the Adam Warlock one, I think.
Yes, that's one of the first
ones. But during one of the end credit scenes, Peter objects to teenage Groot calling him boring.
Oh yeah,
this is the first time that Peter's been shown to understand Groot's word without help of Rocket.
Right.
I didn't even click that, but yeah, it is like he can now understand Groot.
I guess they've been together for like 2. Well, that's then like another year after, I think.
Yeah, so
he's grown up.
So it's been years he's been with him. So
it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like, oh yeah,
it is interesting. It's the classic like Chewbacca Wookiee thing where some people can and some people can't, and it just works situationally, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's also funny as well because like Chewbacca and this, like you're set in a universe of multiple different planets where presumably they've got like an inbuilt translator, like they're having like Doctor Who and stuff that doesn't work
like
for one single race.
Apparently,
like Chewbacca just can't be. Apparently, Wookiee language is just you can't translate, even though people know it.
What's it called? There's it's like common tongue, not
the common. The common tongue is Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. There is something similar for.
Is it like standard?
Yeah, it might be Galactic Standard Tongue.
Yeah,
not
something
tongue,
like
but it's,
something like that.
There is, yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit weird. So yeah, that is my trivia. So all I've got left to do is ask you whether or not this had you more or less hyped for Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.3, Prod-Yes or Prod-No. I think I know what the answer is going to be.
It's a Prod-Yes. The only thing though is because of how Prod-Yes it is, as I said, I'm kind of a little bit nervous about going to see this third
overhyping.
I do think because it's James Gunn's swan song from the MCU, at least for the next 10 years or so. MCU probably might still be around then.
It will be.
I hope he's done his due with it, and and I think he probably will have. It just depends if it resonates with us as an audience or individuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this film, very happy to go away into the next one. What about you?
Cool. Yeah, I'm also Prod-Yes. I enjoyed that and seeing them back together. One thing it did make me realise is that like in the 6 years since this film had come out, the Guardians have done so much stuff.
This is what we were saying
not
just
in
before
Guardians
recording.
films.
Yeah, because I was just saying to Lewis right before, I think I'm quite keen to watch Infinity War and Endgame if I have a chance.
Yeah.
If I can watch those before Holiday Special and do it kind of chronologically, I'd love to do that because they both get quite a lot of play, or the team get quite a lot of play over the course of those 2 films.
Yeah, and part of me feels like the Holiday Special, Infinity War and Endgame might be more must viewing for Guardians 3 than possibly these 2. Because
it's like you said, the second one introduces them all in that first scene.
Yeah.
Reintroduces them all. And the thing as well is the whole thing with Gamora is in those films.
Yeah.
and the other version.
It's going to be a different Gamora in Volume 3 than what we've just seen.
Well, when we last saw, they weren't all together, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they've been doing their stuff with Thor as well.
Yeah. And Groot's now buff
boy.
Buff boy Groot.
Buff boy Groot. Yeah, that is that for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming along. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I enjoyed having you here.
Yeah. But please let us know if you are Proj Yes or Proj No for this, getting you more or less hyped for GOTG Vol.3. We're going to do holiday special?
Yeah, might as well.
So we'll be back
So
next
we'll be
time
back next time holidays.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it just in case our plan changes. Now we've said it, we have to do it.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to hear more stuff like this, just scroll up or down on our project feed and you should find the main pod.
Yeah.
We talk about all sorts of projects throughout pop culture and history.
Yeah, and if you just want into the Marvel stuff, we did Doctor Strange last year, we did Thor last year, so go back and listen to all the Marvel films that come out in the last couple of years. We've done them as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So
and all the stuff that leads up to each of them. So yeah, it's a heck of a lot out there. So
yeah, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.